Thank you for watching Fireside. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider liking and subscribing to be notified when future episodes release. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fireside. With us is a mainstay in the old school RuneScape content creation space, a streamer, broadcaster, news personality, podcast host, and self-proclaimed metrosexual. A man as handsome as he is bald. TastyLife, welcome to Fireside.
Did you rip that out of the blue? Did you write that down? That was impressive.
I try to improvise. I have a couple notes here. Like I want to make sure I get streamer, broadcaster, and all that in. But I kind of ad-libbed news personality. I think I said there too, and metrosexual. Twitter profile. Kind of looking at that.
Did your research?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good, dude. First of all, thank you very much for having me on, man. I'm super excited to talk with you. Been a fan of this cast for a while. You've done some good work. So yeah, it's good to be here, man.
Yeah, no, I figured it would be a good pair because you do a lot of podcasts, you do a lot of just talking, you're a streamer, so talking is like your whole thing, right? So I feel like it's a good kind of a combination. A lot of people say I yap too much, so it fits. And obviously you have a host over at you're a host over at Behecast. And obviously you host Behemoth as well. So shout out to them. Love everything they do. So y'all do, I guess. And I've been watching a lot of Behecast, obviously, especially since the big relaunch, right? With the Moist Critical episode and all that kind of stuff. It's been a blast.
Yep.
I don't want to retread too many of the same topics of last week's Behecast, although I'm assuming most people watching this were kind of 2 weeks ahead. So I don't want to go step by step, beat by beat through Blood Moon Rises, but I do kind of want to get your abridged thoughts on the update, the quest, for example. What are your thoughts, general takeaways, and all that retrospectively, a week in advance?
Oh yeah, for sure. I have to say, obviously I've been playing RuneScape for 8 years now, which sounds like a long time, but I am kind of a new school RuneScape player. I did not really play back in the day, minus a brief period. And I don't know, man, just seeing the evolution of how RuneScape has handled quests, or how Jagex has handled quests in old school, has been really, really impressive. And Blood Moon Rises especially. I think this is the greatest quest that Jagex has ever released. It was just incredible. And you're also new to RuneScape, so I'm interested in your opinion on this. But this quest just feels different than the other quests. It feels like an entirely new era of quests. I mean, even our last Grandmaster quest, While Gothic Sleeps, felt dated compared to this. And that was a year ago, something like that, year and a half ago. So I'm just a huge fan of this quest. I think they knocked it absolutely out of the park. Just the mechanics, all of the cutscenes, the dialogue, just the way they formatted it as well. There's nothing worse than doing a Grandmaster quest or a really long quest and realizing, oh, I forgot something in my bank. Oh, I have to go get this item. I have to go buy this from the GE, whatever it might be. And then just totally removing yourself from the area that the quest is in. It's a big pattern break when you have to leave something like that and go re-gear and do all of that. And Blood Moon Rises did such a good job at keeping you in that area. It felt like you had to start it and then finish the whole thing. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, no, it's all good.
It felt like you had to start it and finish the whole fucking thing. Otherwise,
yeah.
It just got you in there so well, giving you all the items that you needed. I mean, I could yap forever about it, but the quest itself, 10 out of 10, especially the boss, which I'm assuming is probably another point of conversation that we're gonna have here.
I think I'm inclined to agree. I think I've always been a big quest enjoyer. I think RuneScape does quests better than any other MMO. I mean, it's not even close, frankly. And I think that
100%.
There's a lot of really wonderful elements about old quest design. Obviously, there's some elements that haven't aged as well. There's some that are just fully obtuse. There's a lot of unguided series right now going on that kind of hit those beats perfectly, right? You look at Mad Season or Alien Food, and they are stuck on the parts that I think are the worst parts, right? The craziest elements of Monkey Madness recently with Mad Season, or the literal bug on Shiloh Village, right? There's a literal quest log bug on that quest, and I just it's seeing that evolution, right? As like as a newer player coming in and doing all the quests, all the recent ones fully unguided, of course, and like there's a very distinct line in the sand of like older quests versus newer quests. A lot of like the 2013 to 2015 quests try to be something they weren't, which is like that older version. Like Monkey Madness 2, I think, is a good example of a quest that really does feel like OG RuneScape, but not always in a great way. And then
Mhm.
most recently, specifically with like Varlamore, late Corrand quests, they really evolved a little bit past that. Some of my fondest memories, I think, in the game was doing Desert Treasure 2. I'm like such a fan of that quest specifically. It's unbelievable to me. It's like a 10-hour journey. Like truly, it's like four quests mixed together with the coolest lore in the game. I love it so much. And so I really wasn't expecting to love Blood Moon Rises as much as Desert Treasure, because while you did highlight While Gothic Sleeps, that is a port of a 2008 quest from like the
Yeah.
RuneScape. So
Yeah,
I'm a little bit
I
more
actually
lenient on
learned
that
that.
one. Oh, on the
Yeah, I
BCast,
learned that
right?
'cause someone left a comment on the Behe cast, and I was like, "That's just a port? Like, that makes a lot of sense because that quest
Yeah.
wasn't honestly great, you know?"
Yeah, like I think some of the music in that quest is S tier, but yeah, overall you can definitely tell it's a bit older, you know. So Desert Treasure 2 is like the big point of comparison to me, which up until this point was my favorite quest probably in any MMO that I've done. And so I really wasn't expecting Blood Moon Rises to live up to that. And it's so interesting because Desert Treasure 2 is like a globe trotting adventure, right? That's the whole idea, is that it takes all the coolest parts of the original Desert Treasure, the four different locations, four different bosses, and remixes them or remasters them to be like their own entire quests themselves, you know, these huge sprawling areas with different puzzles and unique mechanics. And that to me is unmatched. But what was so interesting about BMR is that they didn't try to match it. They didn't try to make it a globe trotting adventure in the same vein as Desert Treasure 2. They made it a more cinematic thing, right? Like they really invested in, as you pointed out, some of the cutscenes, the music
Yeah.
drops, you know, needle drops. Oh my god, yeah. The cutscenes in this quest were an entirely different breed than I think we've ever seen in RuneScape, right? Like there's never been a cutscene like the bridge one. Um,
Oh, dude, they cooked so hard at that bridge cutscene, so
yeah.
hard.
I was always in a call with my group Iron Man buddy who have been obviously playing with since we began, and we were straight fucking soy pogging the entire time. Like out of our seats, we're like, what is going on? Like, how the fuck is this happening? It's actually crazy to see that in RuneScape. I remember watching the faux playthrough of that quest, and he was like, this is old school RuneScape during that cutscene. And I'm like, I know. I had the exact same kind of vibe or feeling. It was incredible. I think it was cinematic in a way that you really don't expect in old school RuneScape quests. And of course, that all culminated with the Trakan fight. How did you feel about that?
Uh, okay, so that's something I've talked about so much over the past week or two, and I want to preface this. If you watch the Behe cast, you've heard this story. But when we were in Chicago for DMM, we were talking to a couple of the J mods before the quest was released, obviously, and I think I was talking to a Yiza. And we were just chatting about RuneScape stuff, and I was asking him about the new quest. Nothing, NDA leak level, but he told me specifically, he got like quiet and serious, and he was like, the last boss fight is really hard. And I was like, yeah, great. Like I think we should have, more challenging boss fights, yada yada. And he like grabbed my arm and he looked me in the eyes. He's like, no, it's really hard. And I was like, geez, okay. They were debating nerfing the final boss before it even came out. Like they were having that discussion several weeks before it came out. They're like, guys, this might be too hard. People might be mad. Like we should nerf it. And then we got there and it came out. And I will say, mechanically, it was very, very difficult. It was probably the hardest mechanical quest boss we've ever had and probably will have for a long time. But I think they nailed it perfectly. I think it was absolutely incredible. I've shared my opinion about this before, but I'll give like a TLDR. It was mechanically very challenging, but it was not punishing. Like you had a lot of room to mess up that fight and get right back in cycle. The damage that was inflicted is not insane. On top of that, you also had free unlimited supplies, very powerful supplies as well. The brews only knocked your stats down by 1, which is crazy. So you make one mistake, you sip one brew, you're right back in the fight, and you could just stack your inventory with that. Like I said, no death fees or anything like that. So while it was mechanically really challenging, I also think it was really fair in the way that they let you go about it. And also, another point of this discourse is there were a lot. Actually, I don't even want to say a lot. There were a good number of complaints that the final boss was too hard, but just like anecdotally being, behemoth and reading all of these comments and reading all of these Reddit threads, 90% of the posts about the difficulty of this boss were people complaining that people thought it was too hard. Very few people were actually complaining that it was too hard. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people of that opinion. There are definitely some, I'm sure. But a majority of the discourse is like, why do people think this is too hard? When in reality, that was not the case. Like, that was just a talking point that didn't really have a lot of foundation or basis. And I think Jagex did an incredible job on the difficulty. The mechanics were so fascinating. And it wasn't punishing. It was very fair. It was a good learning experience. The first 3 fights slowly introduced you to the mechanics for the final fight. And I just think they knocked it out of the park. Like, I haven't had as many people as I would have assumed upon listening to Ayiza in that bar at DMM that it was too hard. I think it was actually pretty fair.
100%. No, I'm definitely echoing all of that. I think that difficult quest bosses, in a most broad sense, that is such a defining feature of RuneScape quests. I haven't made a video on it yet, but it's something that I'm working on in the background. But like, even through all the quest helpers, all the click blues, all the spamming the space bars, which all of that's fine. Like, I'm not like hating on any of that. Like, through all of that, RuneScape quests still manage to be more memorable than any other MMO because they are the only quests in any MMO. And I will, 10 toes down on this. They are the only ones that demand anything
Forget
from
how
you.
many toes you had?
I was wondering if it was a 10 fingers or 10 toes down. I was wondering which one was it. I didn't want to make it weird. 10 appendages down on this whole thing is there is no other MMO on Earth that has quests that are even a fraction of this difficulty. And if you got to Drakan after doing all of that shit and he fell over instantly, I think it would have been not only a huge disappointment for a lot of people who were invested in the story and the characters and all that kind of stuff, but it would be a huge disappointment as a climax, right? I think of so many different games out there, so many MMOs out there who you're fighting literally the biggest, most badass motherfucker on earth, and he dies in an second, in an instant. His mechanics do no damage because they need to make sure that the quote unquote casual average player will glide through the encounter without any friction. I think the demand of these things is so, it is like the heartbeat of quests. It is so important that quests still challenge you, and they can't challenge you in like the Elvarg sense because the vast majority of the player base, well, we're like in our 30s now at this point. Like, most of us are very well aware of how to deal with Elvarg, but we might not be as aware of how to deal with all these crazy new mechanics. And to speak on them just for a second, I agree. They're incredible. Drakan's mechanics are incredible. The fact that they have like half a dozen new animations for the player character alone for this one-time mechanic or this one-time encounter is insane. The fact that half of them are totally unique mechanics, like evolutions of the soul, right, fight, which I've always maintained is one of the coolest in the game, but had to be really toned down because of the difficult 11 waves before him. Now it feels like this is what Soul could have been with all these like crazy combo switch ups and like memorization games and like it was
if
incredible.
Soul was like that and punishing, dude, that would be nuts. That would be actually insane.
So cool, right?
I would have loved to see that.
I would love to see like a Fasani Soul where you can skip the waves just to farm the Sunfire shards or whatever, but fight like a Giga version of Soul, who's doing like mix ups.
Bosses, man. The people love them. The people yearn for them.
Yeah, 100%. Which is funny because I feel like the Echo version of Soul was probably one of the weaker versions, or not to say easy. He was hard, but it was just like a bunch of random shit happening. But like, imagine he has like, what's up?
You did that fight? I thought you played it because that wasn't in this league's, right? We didn't.
No. Echoes. I played. I started playing a few months before that league. So before Leagues 4. Yeah.
Okay, that was Leagues 5, I think. Yeah, that was my favorite leagues, but that's a different topic. Okay. So you're slightly more of a veteran than I thought.
Yes. I want to clarify that I was like, so I think the most OG WoW content creator, or I should say content creator, just come from WoW to OSRS, like Caradus, then maybe I'm missing someone, but I feel like I was up like close there. So like I would say early-ish 2024. Um, and then
Okay.
uh and then I started making content late 2024, and then of course in mid 2025 you have like Sardako, Zaryu, all that like second gen quote unquote
Yeah, yeah,
people
the
come in.
big wave, the
Yeah,
WoW
exactly.
migration, the great WoW migration.
I kind of preceded that by just a little bit. I made obviously the big video, my most watched video, which is just me talking about switching from WoW to RuneScape. And then after that video, we had Mad Season was around there as well, came in to start playing the game blind, and then everyone came in like a half a year after that. So I have the head start. That's why I'm probably maxed. I have a head start.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That makes more sense. Okay.
But beyond that, like this was what Soul I think could have been if he was just a single fight. And yeah, I loved every second of it. The music was incredible. The needle drop was amazing. The set piece, the fact that they have skyboxes in this quest was crazy. This is a great segue to me because I think that's partially why I was, and I think you said this very thing on BEcast, which is why I don't want to retread the topic too much. But this is, I think, why I was kind of not interested, or I didn't find the Maggot King particularly fun, because I came in, I'm like, this is a new RuneScape. Like, this is a whole ass different vibe than what I was used to. And then you come into the Maggot King and you're like, oh, okay, it's just like a regular boss. It's like a regular modern fight, which is good. Don't get me wrong, that's a good thing. And the punish mechanic's amazing. We'll get into that. But like, for how insane the Drakon fight was, how like completely unique and original all the mechanics felt. In this case, it was just kind of like, okay, you switch your prayers and you hit them, and then yeah, you do your thing there. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I was kind of disappointed with the Maggot King at first.
I've got some mixed feelings on the Maggot King. I will say all of the crazy mechanics that we found in Blood Moon Rises and all the fights in there were very clearly kind of testing the water and pushing the limits of what Jagex is able to do in fights. So I understand them not immediately launching into having those sorts of things in the boss that they introduced in the Maggot King. It would have been cool, but like I said, it felt more like a litmus test for what they can do. I fully expect to see like very similar mechanics in Raids 4. I do like Maggot King, actually. I did not like it at first. It is weird, and I think Vampirium as a whole is moderately disappointing compared to the quest that we got. It doesn't really feel like much, I guess. But the more familiar I got with the mechanics, like one-shotting the grubs out of the air, getting good at the melee punish cycle, that for me makes the fight. Like I really like the fight. I think it's quite fun. It's very easily grindable. If there wasn't the Derox method for the melee punish as well, I probably wouldn't like it as much. But I don't know. Doing that with Derox has been an absolute blast for me. But it is ultimately like a normal boss fight. I think
Yeah,
I agree in that regard.
I think like my original disappointment, and my group Ironman partner can attest to this. I was crashing out. I'm like, why is this fight just like Doom and Yama combined, or Doom and Royal Titans combined? Like why can't we get something really cool, much cooler? And then and as you pointed out, I've grown a lot more fond of it. I still wouldn't say it's like the best of the best. It's no Doom. I think Doom is like such an incredible fight. This was definitely more like just like a solid, fun fight, right? I think the
Yeah.
real places where this fight actually excels at is in the itemization. You pointed out the Darok method. That's a really cool thing that I'm happy they're leaning into. I know Mod Rice also designed this fight. It's the fact that it. I mean, there's a whole conversation about the end game itemization in this game. We don't have to get into that right now, but I'm glad that this is just not another fight where the most expected biz setups are the expected biz setups. I loved having to pull out my Darox and testing that out. I loved having to test a lot of different like I tested out the Colossal Blade, the Bludgeon, like I was testing everything out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really.
Yeah, people bring the Venator bow and stuff. I do
Exactly.
love how Jagex does make. I'm assuming it was a concerted effort on their part to allow just a wide variety of playstyles. It is like there is obviously always going to be like the Giga best in slot, most consistent kills per hour method and gear setup. But this fight feels very much like the player can choose depending on their playstyle. And there's a lot of different gear setups you can use. I mean, you could use range. You could use ZCB, you could even use ACB if you wanted to. And they're also kind of leaning into the elemental stuff, like the twin flame staff. Due to there's this interesting mechanic, I'm not sure if you're aware, in the
Mhm.
Maggot King boss, where if you burn it, it lowers the mage defense or something like that. Burn damage lowers mage defense. It's something along those lines. I'm not sure explicitly what it is, but that makes Twin Flame Staff the second best in slot for consistent kills on this boss, which is really funny because that's not necessarily like a super end game item. I mean, that comes from Royal Titans, which you do after Perilous Moons. So it's I don't know. I think it is really cool that Jagex makes space for even not even necessarily older gear like Darox, but just kind of like mid-level niche items to really have some space to shine. So yeah, I think overall I would give Maggot King a 7.5 out of 10, but it's a good 7.5.
Yeah, I would actually give the exact same score. I think I like I like that, you know, idea of using the twin flame, because that's what I used for the first 300 KC. I actually recently, when I was pushing up to 500 and plus, I was pushing with the fuck, what's it called? The demonic mage weapon from Tormented Demons.
Oh, the Purging Staff?
Purging staff. Yeah, I was trying it out with the purging staff because my sims were suggesting the purging staff was actually quite a bit ahead, and I know that that's because you don't get the double burn effect. That might even out. But I was testing it out because I have wrath runes that I could use with the purging staff and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, let's see how it goes, and it's actually went really well as well. So there's a lot of choice there, which I really enjoy. Now, I don't love using magic on bosses just because I think magic is really lacking in itemization in the game. But I like that they really tried to, like, yeah, it's a weird style because it's like all tuned around having the shadow in the end game. But as someone who did 800 odd kills on Whisper with the Trident, I mean, like, I don't want to wish that on my worst enemy. Yeah,
Oh
I
my
know.
God.
This is pre-IAC. This was pre-IAC. IAC really helped out there. But like the idea of having fire weaknesses be the core function here with the harm staff, I'm like, I like that idea a lot. I don't love how it plays out, where it's like, okay, you want to get 1600 KC on Fasani to do this boss faster, but this is the boss that gives you the item to do Fasani's faster. It's like a really weird thing there, but that's an Iron Man complaint, I would say. I think like I like what they did there. How do you feel about the elemental weakness portion of this fight? Because I'm a little bit like, I like it. I don't like it in some areas. I'm very mixed on it, but overall, I think I'm more positive toward it. How do you feel about the elemental weakness element?
I like that Jagex is expanding into elemental weaknesses, but I do think at times it feels shoehorned because they want it to be useful. Like there's a lot of places where it makes a ton of sense. You know, if you're killing fire giants, use water spells. If you're killing ice giants, use fire spells, some sort of thing like that. But this one feels to me, and I don't even dislike this, I should say. It doesn't, this is not something that I lose any sleep over or think that much about. It feels like they added it specifically because they wanted more people to care about elemental weakness rather than any sort of foundational reason to the fight, if you know what I mean.
100%. I feel like it's, for as much as I'm okay with it, I feel like it's so shoehorned in, and I feel like I haven't gotten an answer to this yet, so I don't want to like commit to it, and I want to figure it out on my own, maybe by asking one of the people that worked on the fight. But like, I wonder how deep into development the burn and mage defense reduction element came in, because like, to me it feels so just like on top of the rest of the fight, just because they realize that even with an 80% fire damage weakness, it still feels really bad to kill the boss with fire damage spells, so they had to like add the burn and the mage defense reduction. That is conceptually, I love the idea of fire spells burning enemies. That's what the recent leagues had, and it was awesome. What I don't like is when it's only on one fight, and I don't even know why. Like, why is the fire spell burning
Yeah.
them? It makes no sense.
No, exactly. That's I forget who I was talking to about this, but I think this league's was a really good example of how they could expand elemental weaknesses to be a little bit more meaningful instead of just like, hey, this guy takes a little bit more damage. Like add unique effects to each sort of elemental spell. At least if the boss is weak to it or something, like burn damage with fire. I think probably healing with water spells is maybe a little bit too OP, but defense reduction with earth. Like these are just top of the mind examples. I'm sure if they sat down and thought about it for a little longer, they could come up with some cool stuff. But I feel like that may eventually happen in RuneScape because I don't know. I think Jagex is looking to flesh out Elemental a little bit more because you're right. This probably was tacked on at the very end. Like this is, they were probably like, well, we got to do a little bit more to make Elemental worth it now that this entire fight is already designed, sort of thing.
Yeah, something I kind of I don't even know if I ever had this in any of my videos, but I thought I had when elemental weaknesses were first introduced. The first thing was great. This is awesome. I love the change, and I still stand by that. I love the idea of elemental weaknesses. I like the idea of making elemental spells better. I think the two things is I think this needs to be a bottom up effort from Jagex where they have to start making them useful in the bottom end, which they already are. Like elemental weaknesses are everywhere in the early game. Then you kind of add some stuff in the mid game where they're useful, and then you add some stuff in the end game. And there that way it's like a pyramid of progression for people, and you can really flesh out a lot of people's like, journey in the game. Okay, mid game elemental weakness armor, weapons, and that leads into the Maggot King fight, blah blah blah. Having it be very top down definitely feels a little bit awkward. And that's where you get into like the second point, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is I don't like that most of a boss's weakness is derived from a variable attached to the boss itself. So like 80% fire damage, 100% air weakness, right? Or air damage, whatever. And the problem with that is that it completely removes any potential or possibility of adding items that enhance your elemental spell damage, because it would create really weird like additive scaling problems, where in my like perfect ideal theory-wise RuneScape world, it would be a boss is weak to fire, and then there's armor and weapons and rings that you can equip to itemize against that boss to give yourself an 80% fire weakness or fire damage bonus that would scale off as like defense or whatever. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's the two different options, I guess.
Yeah, okay, well, just to clarify here, when you say a boss is weak to fire, and then you have to equip all of the gear that itemizes fire
Mhm.
weakness, what would that look like for the other elements? Like, would there, if there was say fire gear and air gear, um, what would the bosses like if it was weak to fire, I guess, and not air? What would it look like if you equipped that air stuff with the same amount of damage percent, or would that like not work on the boss, or how does this
Yeah, it would
play
just
out
hit
in
like a
your head?
regular air spell would with with no additive scaling bonuses from the weakness. So like
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's my assumption. But then again, like in this world, like an air staff would have a 10% air weakness bonus on it. So like even just wearing an air staff against an air weak creature would increase your air damage by 10%. And then you can have like a fucking, I don't know, an air hat, and that's another 10%. And things like that to me add a lot more space in like itemization within the game, and it creates a lot of potential for like new rewards and reward space. Like an idea I pitched to Rice, I think actually in the podcast I have with him like months ago, was elemental jewelry that you would imbue with like the rune crafting skill, right? Which would make sense for runecraft. And now they're adding some of those as Slayer drops, which is really
Yeah, I was
exciting.
gonna say we're kind of getting those. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not to say I'm responsible. By no means am I saying that, but it's really cool to see an idea that I had kind of enter the game and in one way or another. But obviously those are just flat damage bonuses on elemental spells, not like increases to the weaknesses. And I think that's because the weaknesses are so variable in what enemy is weak to what and how weak it is to what, which also creates the problem of like them adding weaknesses to like Vorkath, but it's a complete meme. No one's ever going to actually fire damage spell Vorkath, right? Like it's a total
Yeah,
joke.
yeah, yeah.
So it's almost like flavor detracts from like readability or from like yeah, readability of the game. So how would you feel about that kind of itemization in RuneScape? Do you feel like maybe that would overcomplicate things, or would that do you find that cool? Like I'm curious.
Just like initial thoughts, it doesn't feel like it would necessarily overcomplicate anything in my head. I mean, I'd have to sit down and think about it a little bit more. I think where my worry comes in is it too late to do that at all? Because Jagex has already kind of designed, elemental weaknesses in this certain way. Would they be willing to scrap all of that and change how it works to make space for elemental damage? I guess technically side grades. I don't even know what you would call them, but just that reward space opening up. Do you see Jagex doing something like that?
I mean, maybe really far down the line. I have some hot takes. I think a lot of takes that I think people might disagree with when it comes to itemization in general and just stats in general in this game. Something I think my most controversial video by like a wide margin is where I talk about itemization and stats in the game, and how I feel like in the top end of the game they become the stats in the game are essentially too narrow and close together. Like the difference between an end game item and a mid game item is too narrow and close that you can't really ever make a boss that requires a best in slot piece of gear, which is why when you create new bosses nowadays, you can essentially just do them in Blood Moon. And that's a really big issue for really top end fights like Nex. You saw Torva dip by 50% after Oathplate was released, when Yama is an easier fight, easier to do,
Mhm.
easier to learn, more intuitive. And that's the direction of bosses, right? The Nex is the outlier, obviously, but like every new boss, for as much as we love them, Doom, everything, these are all doable in like mid game gear. You don't need the best stuff. So there's a kind of a snowballing issue there. And I don't know what the solution is fully. I just know, I think, I'm like 80% sure that in the next like 10 years, I think there's going to be like a drastic like community blog where they're going to sit down and say, hey guys, this is a problem and we need to like rework itemization. We need to find a way to make items feel more incrementally impactful and important, because otherwise everyone's just going to keep rushing every piece of content with like mid-game gear. That's like my forward-thinking idea there. I don't know if that answered or continued the conversation there, but yeah.
No, that's funny because I've talked about that exact thing with a few other people. We refer to it as the power creep cliff. There's probably at some point in time going to come a moment when there's just going to have to be some sort of large amount of power creep and rebalancing for the exact same reason that you were talking about right then. But I don't know what that will look like. Like this, in my mind, this is still really far away. But I think the discussion is coming up now because I want to say over the past 3 years ish, they have had very few items that were like true power creep. And most of the time they've spent developing items and reward spaces since then has all been more or less like niche items or side grades. And we're coming into an era where those are starting to be really filled out. There's not a lot of places where we can continue to side grade. And there's just going to have to be like another tier of power creep coming in, essentially.
No, exactly. That's 100% my perspective as well. I didn't have a word for it, but power creep cliff is actually a great way to put it, because historically, based on my nerdy ass research, historically RuneScape has always been heavily power crept, arguably more than it has ever been power crept in the past 10 years. But because of the way it was balanced, it kind of made sense, right? Like in 2005, the best in slot would have been like a dragon longsword. Then in 2006, the Slayer update, the Abyssal Whip came out. The Dragon Scimitar came out after the Whip, which is kind of weird. A fact that a lot of people don't know, but like,
Yeah, that is a fun little fact, isn't it?
It's weird. But like the Abyssal Whip is just an objective upgrade, right? Like it's an objective, huge, I think it's 16 strength bonus power creep. It's fucking insane, right? You imagine a 16 strength bonus increase on a one-handed weapon nowadays. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was 5 years later, in 2011 or 4 years with 2010, I think, the Dungeoneering update with the chaotic rapier or longsword that came out. That was the power creep over the whip, and everything increased by 10 tiers, right? 80 requirement, 90 requirement, blah, blah, blah. And the reason I bring all that up is because over that time, every single piece of content, what would happen is that the new end game would replace the existing end game, and the existing end game would scooch down, right? Barrows was end game at one point, now it's early game. 20 years later, it is early game, and at one point it was mid game in the middle of this timeline. And that held true in old school from what I can see up through around 2017 or 2017. I think Zulrah was one of the last times this happened, where Zulrah was the end game and then went down to the mid game or like late mid game where it is now. But like Cox, no. Tob, no. TOA is a bit of a weird example because of the scaling system that did not work that particularly well for a lot of people.
I've got thoughts on that.
Really weird. Yeah, we can talk about it. So like it's really weird now that a lot of end game content is just stuck in the end game, but it's just every single year it's being devalued, right? The great example being Tob. My God, like the items in Tob are kind of miserable to obtain, right? Like they are just not fun.
Yeah.
And it's only held up by the mega rare, and the only reason the mega rare is not being power crept is because of its scaling system with strength bonus, right? So other than mega rares, and by the way, I just can't imagine a more miserable reality than if the only valuable drop from a raid is the fucking mega rare. Like, can you imagine how insane that grind would be just to get any gold if you're a main, or the item you need is an iron? Crazy. So like,
Yeah, no, I've been to top. I know what it's
yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now you have these situations where in the summer sweep up, they're buffing some items, try to give them a little bit more value. You have these like small little changes, but the reality is that TOB is just as endgame as it's always been. It's endgame for a variety of reasons. It's gotten a lot easier since the power creep that we have gotten. But at the end of the day, the amount of people doing it today might not be particularly greater than the amount that did it in 2018 when it came out. So it's this really weird situation where it's almost impossible to gate a piece of new content behind an existing piece of new content, difficulty wise, right? And all new bosses are going away from chip damage, which is another way to scale to balance it out, right? Or randomized, Jad damage, like you saw on Zulrah, right? This is how it was balanced before, right? You take a ton of damage, so you won't be doing it with, shitty HP levels. But nowadays, when there's no chip damage, when things can be fully mitigated, fully avoided, it's just a pure mechanics check, which you could argue is a great thing for gameplay. But what it might not be a great thing for is the future of itemization in the game and future incentives to create new best in slot endgame items. Sorry for the yap there, but I'm curious to hear your take on that.
No, I'm when it comes to like chip damage specifically, I think that's always kind of a good thing to talk about when it comes to scaling content. Um, Chip damage is it's a very powerful tool, but it can also be one of the most annoying things if it's used incorrectly. I think the example that I've given several times with chip damage is the best application I've seen of it is in Verzik Phase 3, the Enrage, because that gives you some incentive to actually have, better gear, you get done with the phase quicker. It's not so much that it's, overpowering and annoying all the time, but it incentivizes, supply management to a higher level. It's impactful without being awful. And then did you play Next when it first came out?
No, I did. Next came out, I think 2022, so it was 2 years before
Oh
me. But
yeah.
I've played it since. I've played it since.
Yeah. Next, when it first came out, was fucking unbearable. It was. I still hate Next. I think I'm probably
Same.
scarred because of the release of Next. I don't think it works in old school. I know that might be like a semi-hot opinion, but I think generally it is favored as one of the least fun bosses because the chip damage at Next was exhausting. Iron Men would just flat out refuse to get Torva because they're like, I only have 3,000 brews in my bank. That's not enough to get Torva. Like it was just, it didn't add anything to the gameplay. It just made it feel so much worse. It was a massive supply sink. There was no real way to have any sort of I guess I won't say emergent gameplay because people figured out like melee step unders and whatnot to kind of negate chip damage. But there wasn't any real way to make the chip damage there feel impactful or like a good design decision. And I don't know. I think it is a valuable tool if we use it correctly. And I mean, what's the new item that's coming out that has flat armor? The
The
Rondash, the
Rondash,
Raids
yeah.
4 proposal, the Rondash. That's like the first real time we've gotten chip damage or flat armor proposed, which would obviously make things like chip damage way more bearable. But then the problem with that is that if we start getting flat armor on items and bosses start having a lot of chip damage, I mean, it is just genuinely going to be impossible without X item or Y item, which I feel kind of narrows the sandbox feeling of RuneScape. You feel forced into a gameplay path to experience a certain piece of content. So I don't know. I've got mixed feelings on chip damage. I don't think it's the devil, but I think it's very easy to misuse for progression purposes.
It's a really challenging thing to balance because you're having to balance it around people not liking it enough to want to mitigate it. And that's a really hard and arguably impossible needle to thread, right? Like you saw the way people reacted to Baba before the changes in the previous summer sweep up,
Yeah,
or
so
Akka as
bad. Oh
well.
my god.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I think that, and I'm empathetic to that. I think for me, as a gameplay stamp, from a pure like what I'll enjoy playing, of course I don't love chugging brews. Of course I don't love, just taking unavoidable damage all the time when I'm playing well. It sucks. But from an itemization standpoint, it's almost like an inevitability. Um, with that said, with all that said, like my original like pie in the sky proposal was to make it so the way the armor system, quote unquote, rework would make it so at increments of 100 armor, you just gain a flat damage mitigation in that style. So 100 slash would give you one flat slash reduction in PVM, not in PvP probably, but or maybe even in PvP, considering PvP damage has gotten fucking insane as well. I don't know, but the
that is a whole different can of worms, brother.
I'm not. I am not.
When we bring up PvP, things are gonna get messy.
Yeah. I am not knowledgeable enough to steer that conversation. But I think that kind of like system, there's probably so many problems with it. But that's a way to incentivize armor without, I think, fully breaking down or destroying the meta of power gear being the best, of like strength bonus gear being the best. Because frankly, like as it stands, armor is almost feels really, I mean, it is very RNG. It almost feels useless in some cases unless you're just so stacked with it. Like the difference between wearing robes and wearing your regular armor is almost unnoticeable, but the difference between wearing like full Torva with your Din's Bulwark to run across the pillar for like a pillar switch in the Colosseum, that's where you start noticing it. But that's such a huge like pendulum. That's a huge difference there. I wish there was more incrementality there. And the same applies to things like strength bonus. For as much as I think people are really adherent to 4 strength bonus being a max hit, and that's just the way it is, I feel like it would be potentially feel better for some players that what if every 1 strength bonus you gain is actually a chance at a next max hit that guarantees it after 4. So 1 strength bonus 25, 2 50, 3 75% chance to increase your max hit by 1, and then 4 is when you hit that guaranteed chance. It's a small thing, but things like that make it so things feel a bit less breakpointy. I don't know if that's the appropriate thing. The point is, the point I'm trying to say is, as much as we hate chip damage, I feel like it's a necessary evil for what I think is a greater problem, which is the potential of devaluing so much content in the end game right now, you know?
Yeah, no, that's valid. And it's funny you mentioned the strength point not or strength bonus not being breakpoints and instead being percentage. I think we talked about that exact topic on a Behemoth video.
Oh, cool.
Like a year and a half ago. Like this was something that we had discussed that obviously I'm not like a theory crafter. I don't run a lot of sims, and I would not consider myself the foremost expert on the really kind of nitty gritty mathematical tweaks that you could make to items and how that would affect the game at large. But just on the sniff test, I guess, I thought that would be kind of cool. Like there is potentially room for that. I'm not sure how much it would disrupt the metas or change the metas, but I can't imagine it would be that big of a difference. And, people, I think it would feel better for a lot of people.
Yeah, it would reduce the need to like scale things in brackets of 4, which creates some really weird scenarios like we're seeing right now with the Summer Sweep Up buffing the Grazi Rapier and the Sail Door in increments of 4, just to make sure that you do get the max hit guaranteed, which, that's the kind of stuff that I feel like doesn't need to exist in the way it does. And if it didn't exist that way, it would open up the room for just a little bit more creativity in the way some items are balanced. I know it at the end of the day, from what I understand, it's a very minor change. So this is like not the end of the world, but I just want, I guess, to have the conversation about how do we make it so the end game feels great to itemize around. I don't know if you feel this way, but I certainly do, where the end game gets really narrow in how you actually consider what you're wearing and why. In the mid game, you're kind of always a patchwork of all these different things, right? Like, oh, I have my Nita's Not Full Helm, my fucking Blood Moon chest, and now I have my Bandos Tassets. Like you're a patchwork of all these different things. And when you look at the wiki to itemize for like a TOA 350 or something, you are cherry picking the items you do have and creating a build out of them rather than just resorting to just like, every item in the wiki. In the end game, these things get really narrow really fast, right? Like there's really not a lot of choice to be made. You're just kind of bringing it all because it's intended to be the best. That's always been my, I guess, concern with mega rares, is that they will never be devalued because of how rare they are. and they're really rare because they're never meant to be devalued. So you're just kind of stuck with this one item. And now that you have the best in slot slash weapon for 3x3 enemies and sometimes by 2x2 enemies, you are never ever going to look forward to another slash weapon ever added to the game ever again. And to me, and maybe I'm just super, out of the loop here or disconnected from the pulse of society, but that seems like it's going to get boring in like 10 years. I don't know about how you feel about that.
I mean, I feel like Jagex will eventually power creep them, like 10 years down the line. It's hard to say that they won't, but I guess what would be a different solution in your mind?
I mean, my solution is it's retrospective. I think mega rares are like a mistake. Honestly, like
Yeah,
I get
too late for that,
why.
buddy.
Yeah, I get why they added one in Cox. It was like the first real like swing for a completely new set of content. I totally understand why they made the choices like that. I get that they made Cox with the intent that this is like the thing people do forever, and you get the best thing ever out of it. I totally get that, but that's not the game we play now. And oh man, looking back at it right now, I almost feel like you cut your losses. You don't take them out, of course not, but like you just kind of let them be and itemize with other stuff around them. And you remove the crush thing from the scythe. You let it just be the permanent best in slot slash weapon for large enemies. And that's just how it is from now on. But you don't make the same mistake with crush and stab. Because, we are, I guess, a more interesting question for you would be, or to ask you would be, how do you power creep a mega rare without effectively just destroying the piece of content it comes from? Because the second the scythe is power crept by another new piece of content that will be easier to get than the scythe because it's going to be more popular, it's new, it's probably going to be easier because, or not even easier, but like it's probably going to be more mechanically focused rather than like chip damage, gear focused or whatever, like what we've been talking about. So essentially, how do you power creep the scythe without effectively destroying every single reason to ever go into TOB again? You know what I mean?
There's no answer to that. There really is no solution to that, and it kind of sucks because I don't know if I'm just going by my gut feeling. Like I love when a raid has a mega rare. It just feels so good to get. It's just such an aspirational piece of content, but they are, as you rightly put it, very problematic. Like they're nigh impossible to balance around. They produce so many like future problems that you're going to have to deal with. So I just don't have, unfortunately, a good solution to maintain that kind of, excitement of having this giant thing come from a raid that's a lot of money and it's the best thing in the game, while also not creating those very same problems.
Yeah, mega rares are the Jared Leto of RuneScape items, potentially cool, but
Insane ref.
problematic,
Okay.
and it feels as though, I was hoping that with the three current ones that exist, that was like the trilogy of mega rares. And a little part of me was hoping that the community would be like, okay, guys, now we can just create a raid with like 6 or so items that are all going to be really cool and powerful and expensive and sick. But maybe there's not going to be that ultimate item that's going to be just the best in slot, because I had my original concern back a year or two ago before I really understood better. Some might argue I still don't understand the itemization of the game. My fear was that eventually they're going to release a slash weapon that's better than the scythe, and that's going to destroy Tob. Now, knowing what I know, in major part thanks to Mod Rice kind of educating me about the way these items are designed, the scythe is functionally designed to never be outscaled, right? Like you cannot outscale the scythe because it benefits from strength bonus more so than any other weapon in the game. So the only way to ever power creep the scythe would be by creating a weapon that scales even harder with strength bonus, which that would be like insane, right? Like imagine you get like 4 max hits for every 4 strength bonus. Like I feel like that would just power creep the game to
the shadow of melee, which has
yeah.
the shadow's been abundantly problematic.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how mega rares have been tuned, right? They've been tuned to scale higher than other items, which consistently retains their value, right, in the content they come from, because they'll never be outscaled. But all the other stuff is going to be outscaled. And you get into this TOB situation where thankfully the Avernic is still pretty expensive and stuff, but you get into this TOB situation where everything is meaningless except the mega rare. And that becomes worse and worse the deeper into, the game's lifespan we go. So yeah, I like bringing the conversation up. And for the record, I did not bring up Nex in this podcast. My viewers are always like, oh my, here he goes yapping about how much he hates Nex, but I did not bring up Nex. But like, it's always a concern for me. And I'm glad that you kind of share in some ways a similar concern to me about this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's just an ever complicated topic, like especially if we dive into the shadow specifically. I think I don't even want to, but it's just so problematic, and I guess it shares the thread with all the other mega rares the way that it's designed. So I just I wish there was some sort of solution that would make everything happy, but that's also one of the things that I actually like about RuneScape is that it's such a mishmash of weird problems and ideologies and different voices and different opinions that has created such a unique game. For better or for worse, all of its flaws included, I think that's what gives RuneScape such a distinct identity in the landscape of MMOs. And, I wouldn't have it any other way, because I came from WoW, which is like the mono culture of MMOs. Like WoW, I loved it mechanically, but so much of the stuff I found just kind of boring and problematic in certain ways. And I only ended up playing WoW for like 2 years before I quit and transferred to RuneScape. And I've been playing RuneScape for nearly 8. So if that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is.
You're the original WoW transplant. It's kind of crazy to hear, actually.
Yeah, I might be, dude. I might be. But that was long before I was a content creator. So when I was younger, I played RuneScape for a year in 2006 because my parents wouldn't buy me a World of Warcraft membership. And then my brother bought me World of Warcraft for Christmas, which came with a 3-month membership. And I was on top of the world for 3 months. And then my parents wouldn't renew it. They didn't want to pay for it. So I had to go back to RuneScape. So I've swapped back and forth a couple times.
Yeah, I'm definitely inclined to agree. I think that the mistakes or weird janky edges of RuneScape is like what gives it the texture that everybody loves. And I'm all for keeping that, right? For as much as I like want some changes to happen, I always want those to happen with the context that it's not going to like evolve the game in some way that's going to make it smoother or less like, full of all these weird little niches and tech elements and itemization points. Like all of that's great. I think my concern with mega rares is always just kind of the opposite, where they smooth out the end game so much that it just becomes a rock paper scissors of which mega rare to bring on which piece of content. Which again, shout out to the Maggot King for really kind of pushing past that in an exciting way. But simultaneously, and I know some people echo this with Yama especially, is that eventually if you have enough endgame fights that aren't as, I guess, mega rare focused, you get the problem of people going, well, why did I even get a fucking mega rare to begin with if I can't even use it on half the endgame fights? And I'm kind of curious, like, what's the balance there? Where mega rares are so rare and so expensive that of course you want people to use them, but if they use them all the time, it gets kind of boring, right? What's your take there? How do you balance that if you can at all?
50-50.
50-50?
That's all I got.
How do you feel about
50% of the places? Yeah.
Recently, we had like the demon bosses, right? The pair, Doom and Yama. Now we have the Maggot King. Do you feel like the raids for should be very scythe focused? And maybe that's why they haven't removed the crush setting on it yet,
Yeah, it is weird that they have a crush setting on that to begin with. So Raids 4 is obviously going to be crush based. This is probably a good segue to get into Raids 4.
Yeah,
I got a lot of thoughts about this one as
please,
well.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to. I don't know. I just love the scythe. It's my favorite item in the entire game. It's my favorite weapon. I just think it's so cool. It's so stylistic. I would love to bring it more places, and there's just not, as of late, there have not really been that many places to bring it. Like, it's not very useful in a lot of places. People have been using on the Maggot King, which again, props to them for kind of sneaking that in there. It's good for the melee punish phase especially, but Yeah, I think obviously the Crush Mega Rare from Raids 4 is just going to completely replace the Scythe. So it would be cool, honestly, to see the Scythe be useful until you get that, you know?
You think the Crush Mega Rare is just going to be better than the Scythe everywhere?
At Red Raids 4, not
Oh,
everywhere, but at
at
Raids
Raids
4 for
4. Oh,
sure.
yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And obviously it's going to replace the Scythe everywhere where the Scythe is used on Crush as well, right?
Yeah, which shouldn't even be used on Crush anyway, but that's again
Yeah,
a
yeah.
different topic. It's
100%. No, I'm definitely on your side there. I think well then let me ask you, like, what's your expectation for the raid? Like, not even just from an itemization standpoint, like, what are you expecting from the raid? What do you want to see from the raid? If you have to pick like one thing that you like, you're like, if the raid does not have this, I'll be disappointed. Like, what's that one thing for Tasty Life?
I don't think I have a one thing. My expectations for Raids 4 are really, really high. Maybe a little too high, maybe impossibly high, but I don't know. After the release of Raids 3 being such a, kind of a disappointment, um, I think they are making the correct steps with Raids 4. There's a few things that I don't like, which one of the first things I see in your little bullet point list here is group content versus solo content. I've got
Mhm.
a lot of thoughts about that we can get
Yeah,
into,
yeah, I
but
love that conversation.
um, yeah, in general, I really like the fact that they're making it, combat focused. It is really combat. It's just combat rush. There's no puzzles. There's no prep like there is in Chambers of Zarek. Like, there's a reason that people who have done all three raids to a large extent almost unanimously prefer TOB. Like, there are very, very few people who are end game who have done everything who don't think TOB is the best raid. Because it is. Like, there's a few design philosophies that I think they made with Tob that are just absolutely timeless and such good decisions. None of the rooms by themselves are hugely complex. I think people kind of overestimate the difficulty of Tob, because it was such like gate kept content, which again, with the solo versus group content, we'll get into that. But each room really has like one, two, maybe three core mechanics, but usually one or two that you just have to get really good at. And it's a lot of rhythm based, it's a lot of understanding your attack patterns and the boss's attack patterns. And it makes so much room for emergent gameplay. Like, the most fun I think I've had in my RuneScape PVM career is soloing Tob. I did that way back in the day, probably 3-ish years ago, right after the Blood Fury was released. So like slightly easier than before that. There were only like 50 people in the world who soloed Top without the Blood Fury, so I don't know if I would be up in those ranks. But learning something like solo Zarpus was I still maintain solo Zarpus. If I don't know if you've attempted solo Tobs or if that's on your list.
Definitely on my list. I've done a lot of trios and duo, or no, trios and up to 5 mans, but never solo.
Solo Zarpus is the single best PVM encounter that RuneScape has. It is so insanely fun, at least for my brain, like the way that I mechanically engage with content, just the patterns that you have to form. You have to have such a deep understanding of movement, attack cycles. Like, you really have to be super pro at those mechanics. And then when you get it down, it feels so good. So again, just stuff like that as a design philosophy where they give you like one or two interesting and relatively complex mechanics to work with, and there's just room to expand upon those and make them efficient and find out new methods and emergent gameplay. And it sounds like that is kind of the direction they're taking it with Raids 4. So my hopes for Raids 4 are very, very high. And I hope not to be let down like I was with TOA, but I think they've learned from their mistakes enough. Jagex is usually pretty decent at doing that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think that it's interesting. TOA was my favorite raid when I was first started playing the game. And obviously you could say, well,
And it
you
should be.
know,
That's what it's there
yeah,
for.
like you could say, oh, you haven't done the other raids. And you're right. At that point I hadn't. I've never done Cox or TOB at that point. But like looking back at my experience with all three raids, I never enjoyed a raid more than learning 300s and learning
Interesting.
I'm forgetting what the invocation is called, the one that speeds up the warden a ton, right? Like
Oh yeah. Insanity.
warden was my favorite. Yeah, Insanity. Warden for a long time was my favorite fight in the game. The best music, best soundtrack in the game. Really cool. Kind of had that epic feeling to it. I really enjoyed it. And I really loved learning the game, learning it blind and figuring how things work and itemizing for it. Individually, I actually like most of the fights in TOA a ton, except Kefri. Fuck Kefri. But
Fuck Capri, bro.
but every fight individually, like in a vacuum in TOA, I actually really enjoy. It has some cool tech to it. I think Zebak gets a bit boring, but again, every fight gets boring in High Invocations. At 300 as that perfect like in between. I think Akka is just such an incredibly cool fight, but at the point in which you do it is just miserable. Like every fight together becomes fucking miserable. Like, every fight is more complicated than the vast majority of solo fights in the game, and you're doing them back to back to back, and you're scaling up with the invocations. So if you mess up one time, you can get one shot, right? Like it becomes really miserable. And of course, the tale as old as time, the deeper into TOA you go, the worse it becomes. And I definitely, doing 450s is just miserable. It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. In my opinion.
I've got a 35-minute video on my YouTube channel about that exact topic.
Yeah, exactly.
2A is designed for 300. 2A is designed to get people into rating, scalable mechanics. You can learn as you go, as you feel more comfortable, you can add stuff on. And then you get to the sweet spot at like 300 where things are fun. They don't take fucking free. You're not just butterflying Akka for 15 minutes or like red Xing Baba for 10 minutes, which is just the epitome of bad gameplay, in my opinion. And then once you get past 300, past 350, up to like the 400 plus range, starts to creep in a little bit. And you're like, wow, I'm actually not enjoying this. So I mirror that sentiment exactly.
Yep, and my experience learning each raid, I think the TOA one was the smoothest. Obviously, it was the smoothest onboarding with the biggest dip in quality. Every time I learned every other raid, like Cox and TOB, it was a lot more like really obnoxious onboarding, especially with Chambers as Eric. My fucking god,
it's very very punishing. The Chambers is so old,
Yeah, it's old, it's janky. None of the mechanics really make any sense, and then like. It's mainly not, it's not even the fact that any of that, frankly, it's the fact that like I had to spend like half my time finding people to teach me in Weedu raids. And it was just like a whole ordeal before I could even get into the raid. And then I was like, oh my God, I spent an hour finding people. And now I'm like, I don't want to like fuck up. And like, so it was just a whole different, the vibes were bad. But nowadays, Chambers as Eric is actually one of the more chill experiences as far as a raid goes, right? Like it's actually super, super chill. Like doing solos is pretty chill. Doing trios is insanely chill. And it's a very like whatever experience. But like by and large, I'm not the biggest like raids enjoyer. I think all the raids are fine. I think TOA obviously nowadays I'm kind of dreading going back in there. Cox I'm totally fine with. Tab I enjoy. I think I after learning it, it's like as you pointed out, it's super smooth. It's very like. It's well designed. I like that all the bosses are very simple, but have a lot of tech to them. So you make that conscious choice to learn. I think one of my favorite parts in Tab was like getting a hang of like web running. Getting a hang of web running for the first time was really fun.
Yeah.
That's things like things like that, which it definitely appeals. And it's only like 20 minutes long, which is great. Great time for a raid, by the way. I hope raids 4 is not 40 minutes. Please God, make it like 20 to 25.
I would be shocked if they do that. It'd be kind of a blunder.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It would be horrible, especially if you die and you have to reset or whatever. But like, I'm never the biggest raids fan. I'm always just like I enjoy the one boss, whether it's a group boss or a solo fight. I just love the one boss that I can grind for the 2 or 3 items it drops. Fasani's notwithstanding because it's like 9 items or whatever. With raids, a much longer experience, a bit more punishing because of that. But it's not like I hate them, right? I'm not trying to suggest I hate them. I still like enjoy them, and I'm very, very, very excited for raids 4, insofar as just seeing what they do, right? Like every raid, if you look at it, is pretty unique, right? Like Cox is a roguelite. That's essentially the main inspiration, right? You go in and it's a randomized layout. Of course, people have learned it since then, but it's a randomized layout where you're like making your own, like using the hotspots to make your own supplies. And it's like a rudimentary form of dungeoneering from RuneScape 3, right? Like and now we have CG, which is that too, but like really, really cool. Really, really, really cool. And if I don't love everything until Ulm, which I don't, I appreciate it for just how much of a swing it was as a piece of content. They could have very easily just copied World of Warcraft raids, right? With trash and the bosses. TOB is a gauntlet, which is people enjoy. It's the shortest one. It's the most smooth. Each fight is more understandable. And TOA, it's its own separate like beast entirely. And I'm almost curious, while we know that the new raid is going to have that TOB layout, I would still love to see something differentiating about it too, right? Like that, like what gives this raid the personality that all the three ones have, for the better and for the worse, right? It's that like edge that we talked about with RuneScape, that little like texture that we love about it. What's the texture for this new raid? It can't just be top two. I think if it was top two, not to say I would be disappointed, it would still probably be great, but like, it would lose some of that like uniqueness that raids are known for. How do you feel about that?
I've got a theory ever since Blood Moon Rises came out, is that the texture is going to be inclusion of all these new age mechanics. Probably. I think functionally it will run similar to TOB, which I don't know if like that's what you kind of don't want to see. I do want to see that. I love the experience of TOB. It's just very smooth. There's no trash. It's just kind of do the fun part is what it
It's
feels
not
like
that
to
it's
me.
not that I would be disappointed by that, or it's not that I would be like, oh, this sucks now. Like, I agree with you. I think TOB is the smoothest raid, but by a large margin retrospectively. Like, I don't know, this is kind of off topic, but like, for example, like CMs, bro, it's like pulling teeth for me. Like, the most fun part about Chambers is
SDM.
Eric.
I've done
I,
so many of those.
dude, I love Ulm so much. Nowadays,
Almost a great fight.
yeah, it's
Nothing
cool
else
now
in
that I
Chambers, in
understand
my
it, but
opinion.
everything else sucks, right? Like in CMs is like, now
Yeah.
spend 80% of your time doing the dog shit, right? And you're like, fucking, I hate that. So the cool, like, I'm speaking like very like conceptually here, where it's like the concept of Chambers as Eric is like the roguelite mode. The concept of of TOB is the gauntlet. And for TOA, it's like this like make your own raid type, like affixes, almost like Mythic Plus in World of Warcraft. If you played WoW when Mythic Plus
I
came out.
quit it in Warlords of Draenor.
Okay, so one expansion before the best one. That's a bummer, but I get why you quit and WoW. That shit
Warlords
sucked.
sucked so fucking
Yeah,
bad, bro.
yeah, it
That
sucked.
was hot dog ass, bro. That's the worst expansion, which sucked because the raids were really fun, but everything else around it
It
was
was
just
so
not
bad,
good.
which is funny because Legion is my favorite expansion that came after. But it's regardless. That personality is very unique. I'm assuming it's going to be very similar to Tob, but simultaneously, I feel like there's some spice you can throw in there to differentiate it outside of just boss mechanics. Where like, what if they create like, this is totally not going to happen, but what if they create like 15 bosses, and every time you enter, it's a random combination of the bosses that all lead up to the final boss? Like, not to say that would be great, but
I
it's an
I don't
example.
like that. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest. I don't like
I'm sure people would hate that.
that.
I'm just giving an example of how potential there
Yeah.
is a potential to spice up the gauntlet mode that differentiates this from a Tob, right? Because at the end of the day, if it's just Tob, I think that because of that, what might happen is it just becomes like, okay, well, what do you like doing more? Like, which bosses do you like doing more? And at that point, it's like, okay, well, then if the broad consensus is the boss fights are less fun than Tob, it's just going to be kind of a failure, right? Like, even if it's fine, it's still
Yeah,
going to be kind
no,
of seen as bad.
absolutely correct. Yeah.
But so your expectation, Tob, I agree. I think that is the smart thing, and I think we already know that that's what they're going to be doing. How do you feel about the rewards so far that they've announced? They just recently, as of recording this, they did some adjustments to the rewards. How do you feel about those?
Yeah, I feel good about them. They don't like blow me away, to be honest, but I'm not sure what they could have proposed that would have blown me away. Obviously, we've stated the potential problems with mega rares, but given the kind of corner that they've backed themselves into, I think it's fine. I think this is probably one of the safer options that they could have proposed. It's probably the hardest one to talk about because, again, I don't really know what else they would have done instead of this. Uh, I really did not like the hybrid armor set that they proposed. I'm very glad they got rid of that one. They're replacing that with a mage spec weapon that I think, in theory, is really cool. For those of you guys who did not read the blog, essentially all of our mage spec weapons right now, besides the volatile, are like defense reduction, and then the volatile is just not good enough to use in PVM. No one really brings it for PVM anywhere. So this is our first kind of like the mage dragon claws, I guess is what they kind of put it towards, but it works in a really funky way where the spec is 50% and it gives you 100% accuracy, 50% damage, which is not that insane by itself because the max hit is not particularly high. But if you roll it successfully, your next 3 hits are going to be 2 ticks, and they're also buffed by that same 100% accuracy, 50% damage. So it gives you a lot of damage output theoretically, but not all at once, which is cool because you can spread it among targets. If there's multiple people to attack, you have to like Zerg one down, you can just do that one. Or if, you know, something's health isn't high enough to justify putting all 3 of your next hits on there, you could spread them out to other places. It's cool in theory, but my gut is telling me it's not going to be that fun to use. I don't know if you feel a similar way. It just, I don't know. I'm kind of unsure how I feel about that one specifically.
I think just to even start on in a broad sense, I am just so glad that we're getting a mage spec weapon. It's been such a pet peeve of mine ever since I started playing the game, where I'm like, you
That
have
is fair,
melee,
yeah.
which is so fleshed out, so fun to progress and itemize as a style with melee, like as you play the game from the early to mid to late game. So much fun. You have so many different choices, from the Void Waker to the 2 types of claws to now the Crimson Kiston. Like, there are so many unique things to do with melee. Even the fucking Noxious Halberd spec I used when learning Colosseum, right? Because the Manticore venoms you, right? Like, there's so much there. And then you look at Mage, which before the IAC had 3 items. 3. It's you just use elemental spells with anything. Then you get like an Iban's Trident Shadow. That's it. No one cares about the Sanguine SD because it's a meme weapon that costs a lot to use. Now they're kind of buffing it a little bit. Like, it was like depressing. You look at Mage, you're like, what the fuck? Range has the very similar issue. Obviously, the ZCB is insane, but I'm just glad that we're getting a Mage spec weapon. I just want to start that out there. So whatever criticisms I have, I am so happy that we're getting a Mage spec weapon, even if it's just 1 for now. The
No,
actual
I do
use,
agree with
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I do agree
yeah.
with that 100%. It is, it's such a, Mage is so weird. Mage is so hard for Jagex to expand upon because just traditionally the way that old school was designed and RuneScape was designed, Mage always really felt more like a utility than anything closer to a
Combat style.
true combat style like you know, Ranger or Melee. And I think they're trying to change that now, so it's a good step forward. But
Yeah,
yeah, this one particularly, I'm gonna wait for a better player to tell me what to think. You know what I mean?
I want to say that if you design a fight to be maged, you've kind of like locked yourself into making it a combat style. Like, the last thing I would want in a game is for the meme style, quote unquote, to be used for 80 hours of grinding. Like, that sounds fucking miserable. And like for a fight like
Yeah,
I think the Whisper is where mage really, it's like you don't have an option anymore. Like, you need to
no,
use
it makes
mage on this fight.
Whisper
Um,
sucks.
yeah, exactly. And like the fights, I actually love the fight, but like not having a shadow on that fight before the IAC came out was like pulling teeth, right? It was one of
I
my
don't like
least
that
favorite
fight very
grinds.
much.
Oh, you're not a big fan. But
It's good in theory, but I think it drags on a little bit, and
it does drag on a
it is
bit.
hard gear locked. It's hard gear locked. I would never do that grind. Well, now that the IAC's in here, I'd do it with the IAC, but previously I would have never done that grind if I didn't have Max Made Shadow, which is such a crazy requirement for what is like an early late game boss, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think like things like fleshing out the style are so important to making that style more exciting to progress through. And even though and I've always said this, it needs to happen from the bottom up. It needs to happen from the early game, mid game, late game. You don't want to add a new end game crazy meta changing item without considering, okay, well, now how are we going to make more of these kinds of items in the mid and early game, right? Like, you always want to kind of build up to the big meta change rather than just kind of, throwing it out there. But with
Yeah.
all that said, I like the concept. I will actually do. I like the concept of the new weapon, and I like it for 2 reasons. The first one is it's not just a declaw spec at range. That's nice. The second thing is that because you can alternate targets, which is a cool element to it, and because the attacks are 2-tick, they're not just harder hitting, they're 2-tick. There's a level of skill required to actually get uses out of the spec. And I've always maintained the fact that end game items should also like innovate on your gameplay in some way. Like they should impact the way you perceive the game. I think it was me on the Saycast where he said the hardest weapon in the game is an early end game item or early or late mid game item, the blowpipe, because it's 2-tick. And then the deeper you go into the end game, the more you're just kind of dealing with a 4 or 5-tick weapon. Every mega rare is 5-tick, and the new one's going to be 5-tick. They all kind of play the same. And
Yeah.
having that level of like, oh, not only did I get an item, but now the way I perceive the fight has dramatically changed. Like my ability to do DPS during certain points, the way I'm perceiving certain mechanics has changed because of this item. That is the coolest thing. And to bring up Zarpus as an example here, that happens on Zarpus, right? Like you blowpipe him for a while and it's a meme fight. It really is just kind of a meme when you're blowpiping it.
Yeah,
But then when you get the
sure.
scythe, when you learn how to run him, that's where the fight gets so much more depth. Having the scythe opens up that like really cool play style. And you could be totally right. Maybe it's miserable to use and I will eat my words, but I maintain the philosophy that I think that specifically endgame items should make you consider something more than just which tile you're standing on or whether you're going to hit in 4 or 5 ticks. Like I don't like the fact that Blood Moon gear is the coolest set of gear in the game because it makes you react to the proc that you're getting. Theoretically, that feels weird to me because it's an early game piece of set of gear. So yeah, you could be right that it's boring, or sorry, it's frustrating to use. You could be totally right, but I rather have the swing and the fail than no swing at all. And that's always been my take with the Mega Rare too. I wish they went like, it's a fucking 7-tick weapon that turns, like go crazier. And then if people hate it, you can dial it back and make it like, the more traditional item. But without that attempt at something unique, we'll never get that like itemization that we have with Melee now,
Yeah, no, to clarify, I am 100% in agreement with that. I would rather Jagex try and fail than not try at all and just have such a flat, boring item come into the game. And I don't think it's going to be unfun to use. That's just my fear, if that makes sense. Because you're right, like giving the example of Blood Moon armor, like that's such a cool mechanic where that upgrade actually forces you to react in certain situations to the procs that you're getting, which I think is a good way to expand the game. And I hope it is fun to use. I really, really do hope it is fun to use. So I guess we'll see.
I've always maintained that I think even the Sanguinesti staff should have been turned into a spec weapon because even with the summer sweep up changes, I don't think anyone's gonna fucking use this item. Unless you're maybe solo Cox, maybe, but it's still gonna be garbage.
It'll be used for learning solo Cox.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Good. They're gonna learn 5-tick, or 3-tick with the IAC.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. So I'm like, man, just rip off the Band-Aid and just make it a cool spec weapon. Even if it's like a utility spec weapon, like an AoE heal between like rooms or something. I don't like go a little bit crazier when it's an item that literally no one uses. The same applies for the Grazi Rapier, which is like it's a bespoke fucking mid-game Slayer item. Like, what the hell are we talking about for a top reward, right?
And even then, barely,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like in some setups,
Very, very sad to me because that was like when I first started playing RuneScape, I played right after TOB was released. And I was like level, I don't know, 100 total combat. And I was doing Slayer in the Neve Slayer caves, and some guy was using a rapier next to me, and we were just like chatting, and I was like, bro, can I hold your rapier? Like, I promise I won't scam you. And I wasn't going to, dude. And he was like, no. And I kept fucking, I was like, please let me hold your rapier. Eventually he let me hold his rapier and I killed a Bloodveld with it. And I was like, this is the coolest day of my life. And I did give it back. So shout out the guy that lent me the rapier. Because they were like 300 mil back then, which was a fuck ton of money. Like that was a lot for an item. The Tebow back then I think was like 1.1 bill or something. So it was like a quarter of a mega rare, which nowadays, what is it, 20 mil, 15 mil for a rapier?
Yeah, I think it's dropped dramatically. It's pretty miserable, and that's just because of how it's rare, right? Like this item would be worth less than the Fang if it was more common, right? Like, or even just as common as the Fang. It's pretty depressing. I think. Well, first of all,
Fang's far too common. Different point, but I just want to say that. Thanks.
Yeah, agreed. I think that I mean, first of all, very wholesome story. You know, sometimes you just got to hold another man's rapier. You know, you just got to do it sometimes.
You
You got to do
know,
it to him,
you
you
just
know?
got to do it sometimes. I wish I remembered his name, but shout out if you happen to be listening to this.
Yeah, no, we've all done stuff in college, okay? And I think like the most, I, I want to say this, because first of all, I wish they made the rapier into a spec weapon also, but again, I like spec weapons. What can I say? I also feel like there could have done some really cool stuff with the idea of a rapier as an item, right? Like I think one of my earliest thoughts was like, what if like whenever you correctly pray against a melee attack, you repost with it like you would with an actual real rapier, and your next attack is one tick earlier. Like that would incentivize people to perfectly understand how to lazy flick against a fight or something like that, right? Things like
Yeah,
that
yeah, for
you
sure.
could do some really cool gameplay stuff there. Obviously, it's getting a bit better, but again, I don't think it's going to be used, but who knows? To quickly return back to raids for rewards, because I know we kind of went on a bit of a tangent there with the mage
That's
item,
okay.
but um, the I'm a fan. It could be bad, but I'm a fan of the idea of it. Maybe we can continue with the new proposal as well, which is the piety upgrade. How do you feel about that?
Honestly, I like it. I like it for a specific reason, bringing it back to the power creep cliff that we were talking about. Like there's going to have to be a time when we just get flat upgrades to stuff. And this kind of shows me that Jagex is not necessarily afraid of that. Now, my fear with this, and I think they're already aware of this and they plan on this not being the case, is that it becomes like a prayer scroll from Chambers, which is also insanely problematic with how common those things are and how powerful they are. That should be like a 125 mil upgrade. If they make this a fairly rare drop, like I want this to cost 500 mil and be deleted from the game. Like that's what I want from this. But I don't know. It's cool to see. Obviously, it's going to be a huge upgrade, but as long as it's very expensive and very hard to get, I don't really consider that problematic in terms of like power creep.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's problematic. I think at worst, I would say it's just kind of boring for an item that gives like 6 max hits to the scythe. It's like, okay, it's just a passive thing. I think the part that if I were to pick anything that would disappoint me about it is that it's literally just piety, same drain rate, same everything. It's just better.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I also understand like the it's one of those things where I knew the community was going to think it's fine. You know, it's solid, right? It's not the most interesting thing ever, but it works because it's always going to be the thing that people want from the raid because it's so impactful.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
I-
exactly how I feel about it.
and they it's almost like sometimes a safe choice is a good choice. I guarantee you the Jagex did not want another Doom situation with the 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 spade, the demonic spade, and
Oh God, yeah, yeah,
like that whole situation was such a catastrophe. I'm assuming for like the production cycle of Doom and just like Varlamore Part 3 that the last thing they wanted is for raids 4 to get like hard locked with rewards proposals. So sometimes you just got to rip the band-aid off and just do something that you know people are going to enjoy and take a risk elsewhere. Talking about the
yeah.
elsewhere
Well,
risk. Oh, sorry, go go go.
oh no, we're probably gonna lean into the same thing here. I am totally fine with this being a safe and cool reward that's valuable and will always be valuable, adds a lot to the raid. That's fine. I do prefer it when Jagex takes risks, but I think that's exactly what they're doing with the Rondash. And that's
Mhm.
why I'm actually very excited to see the Rondash. I don't know if that's what you were leaning into, but
Yes,
that was the next
that
thing
was.
kind of on my mind.
I was so excited to make that segue, but yeah, I guess you can do it. Yeah, I love the Rondosh. It's like it is so fucking sick. When I saw it, and to be clear, I don't even love like the model. I think it's a bit too much, but the idea of the weapon is it's peak. It's so cool. It's exactly what I feel like the game needs more of in the end game, where you're just doing more
Yeah,
than considering your next 4 or 5 tick attack cycle and beyond the boss
exactly.
mechanics. And like it's one of
Yeah.
those items. Realistically, I want you to bring higher and higher risk items, not like risk in the PvP sense, but like risk as in like you have to play well to utilize them well items. The more you know about a fight, right? A great example more recently is the Darok punish on Maggot King. Like If Darok, for whatever reason, was an endgame set of gear, that would be even cooler because now you are making that conscious, deliberate choice of doing something harder for a better reward, or for a
Yes.
quicker kill, you know? And the Rondash really fits that archetype a little bit, where it's an item that truly feels like you have to know how to play the game to utilize it well. Maybe you are purposely taking chip damage to utilize its ability well and eking out that extra DPS. For people that don't know, it soaks up the damage you take. I think at increments of 2, and then when you have 10, you can like smash it against the enemy and deal the damage you've soaked up back at them with an accuracy roll.
Stacks up to 20 total, which I
20.
guess would be. Well, I am curious. It has a flat armor reduction of -2,
That too,
and
yeah.
which the damage that you take that's absorbed by the flat armor more accurately, because this won't. I'm 99% sure this won't work if you take mage damage or typeless damage. The flat armor only activates on range and melee, and that's what the shield itself will soak up. You can soak up to 20 damage. So if you take a 1 and it gets flat armored down to a 0, I don't know if that gives you 1 or 2 charges to the total of 20. I would assume 1. But yeah, it stacks up to 20, and then it's functionally a Gmaul spec after that, where you can unleash that for like a slight bonus if you stack it up to 20. I think you can hit like a 28 or something like that. But it's 0 tick damage. And so it is such a cool item, and I'm very happy to see that Jagex is, experimenting with it.
Yeah, these are the kinds of items that I think really create some cool boss design potential too, right? Like when you have damage on demand, like you can with this item, if you play correctly, you can create things that feel like more DPS checky. You know, you can create moments where you need to deal a certain amount of damage quickly. And right now, they really can't make those moments because damage is so driven by RNG in this game. So, like with stuff like this, it's very like deliberate. It's a deliberate choice to allow players to optimize fights in a different way than they could before. I love this item. It's the coolest item, which is interesting because I think there is another item that competes for the coolest item in the raid. But for the Rondage, for a moment, where do you see this item be used? I'm kind of curious what your take on that is.
See, that's actually the part that I'm kind of struggling with, because I don't really know. This feels like it should be an item that's used a lot in the end game, but if you think about melee styles, how much one-handing of melee items do we do? TOA with the Fang, you don't really use it at all in TOB. You don't typically use it in chambers for any reason, or at least a place where you would be taking that chip damage to actually utilize the special effect of the Rondash. So I feel like they're just going to have to design new content around it to get full use out of it.
My original like immediate thought was Nex because of how quickly Nex attacks and how much chip damage you take. Specifically, obviously not with the mage attacks, but you're generally in melee, so you are going to be meleeed. But the big concern there is that you're so inaccurate on Nex because Nex's armor is incomprehensibly stupid that you're just always going to be leaning for the Avernic there because of the accuracy bonus that it gives. My take on that is I know there's currently a bit of a debate happening with the Rondash of what kind of attack bonuses should it give. In my humble opinion, they can lower the strength bonus, but keep the attack bonuses similar to the Avernic. That way, you are going to use it on Nex, because with Nex, and because you use the Fang, you camp the Fang off it on Nex for the melee portions of the fight. Losing a max hit is more than just losing for strength bonus on a Fang because of the way the Fang works with your max hit calculation, right? So you can actually take a larger strength bonus loss from not equipping the Avernic, but you can't afford to take the accuracy bonus loss. I think that's how it works. So I would like the Rondash to be more driven by same accuracy as the Defender, but with a lower strength bonus and the unique passive effect. That way, it's not going to cannibalize the Avernic, but it will be good for accuracy, and where it immediately gets that next use case. How do you feel about that?
Like that, I think, again, kind of the gut check on that sounds fairly useful, but I'm curious, are there any other instances besides Nex where you think that would actually have an effect?
No. No, I think TOA is obviously like the only other area where you're just hard camping the Fang whenever you're meleeing. And I want to say most bosses in TOA where you're meleeing have chip damage. So except Kefri. So like it would be used on Akka, it would be used on not on Zebak. It would be used on Akka, it would be used on
Do you
Baba.
use it on Akka though? Don't you normally just butterfly that?
Yeah, if you have the oh no, I guess you can butterfly with the Ayak as well as the shadow. Yeah, so I guess
I guess
only if
that's
you're doing
true.
traditional Akka, you would get some use cases because he does a lot of chip damage. Does it have negative? I don't know if you have it pulled up right now. Does it have negative range bonuses?
The Rondash?
Yeah,
I would imagine. Let me look it up. It does negative mage and range
that's a bummer. I
and
feel like
zero attack bonus.
if it had neutral range or even a little bit of range oomph to it, it would be cool on something like Akka, where he does a lot of range chip damage, so you can have it equipped with whatever range weapon you have if you're using a crossbow, if you're using like a Zariat or whatever on him, a ZCB on him. I don't know why you would. You generally wouldn't on Akka, but like that's an example of what you could do where you could offhand it, but if it has negative bonuses, you really wouldn't. Yeah, it's a hard thing to let's just leave it at that. Let's just leave it at saying that hopefully that has a use in raids 4.
Yeah, like I said, I imagine this item is kind of in Jagex's mind with the idea that they're going to design new stuff around it because that seems to be the path that Jagex takes for a lot of these newer kind of mechanics and stuff that they're adding, which I don't think is necessarily bad. It feels like the same exact idea that they're implementing with sailing, where sailing feels very disconnected from the game right now, but clearly their idea is to flesh it out with future updates and make it a little bit more involved with the game. So
Mm.
that's what I'm expecting.
How do you feel about the Ascension crossbows?
I don't feel about the Ascension crossbows.
Really?
I that's the one item that I really have not thought a lot about. Not, I don't mean that in a good or a bad way. I just mean that flat out, that's not something I've really thought about. I don't think I have a good grasp of what they're supposed to do or where they're supposed to be used.
I think they're just supposed to be a flat blowpipe replacement. They're just better than blowpipe everywhere when you have them.
Okay, where do we use the blowpipe?
That's a good question. I would say
At least
again,
an end game.
yeah, that's the
Like
hard one,
that's
right?
where I'm thinking about this.
If you're assuming full mega rare setup, then probably not a lot of places. Yeah, because you wouldn't use it on in Tob. You wouldn't use blowpipe on Tob. Nilo room, I guess, but no. Yeah,
I mean,
you don't use
blowpipe's
the.
better because it's two tick. So
Well, no, these bows are these are 2 tick too.
I thought they were three tick.
No, they're 2 tick.
Oh, okay. So they're a three tick base, but rapid it's two tick. Okay, I actually didn't
Yes.
know that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
assumed
So
it was just a three tick thing.
I actually like that. That's partly why I'm like immediately jumped in like to this reward. I'm like, this is actually really cool because the blowpipe is in a perfect place to get power crept a little bit. Like it is an iconic item. You get it in the late mid game, I want to say, as an Iron Man, so it's perfect for the end game reward to be better than it. It's really cheap, so it can use that upgrade. It's not like it's going to get devalued much. It's great reward space there, and it's perfect to come from such a difficult or hopefully difficult piece of content. I see these kind of going kind of crazy because you do have bolt effects on them, although not each one as well. So I wonder if that can be interesting too, because I know they have specific bolts associated with them that you can have onyxes and diamonds on them too. I almost wonder if this item will actually be the best in slot in more situations than we think because it just has better stats than the blowpipe. Like Inferno could be not on Zuck, but like or maybe the Jads, but like
Yeah, for
elsewhere
the
on the
waves.
Inferno.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah, because that is a place where you definitely would use the blowpipe. That'd be cool to see. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just design wise, I like the idea of dual wielding crossbows. I think
Yeah.
that sounds cool. But the again, the main problem they're running in with here is like the bolt effects. So this I guess the benefit of this over a blowpipe is that it also counts as heavy ranged. So something like Maggot King, maybe this would be good on. because that's weak
Oh, definitely.
to heavy range.
100%. Yeah.
So it is it's a very cool idea. Um, it just feels again, I almost want to say it feels kind of safe because it's
Mm.
really just more or less a flat upgrade
It is.
with
I
some
think that the
flavor given
thematics of
time.
it, yeah, exactly. Like the flavor kind of wins me over a little bit there, where it is a flat upgrade, but it's a good flat upgrade. Where like beforehand, it's just the blowpipe that existed in that space, other than just hand holding darts, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I think thematically it's really cool. I'm surprised they actually went with the RS3 design because the item is actually from RS3, which is really interesting. Um,
I did know that. Yeah.
really surprised about that because usually there's a bit of a controversy around that, or maybe like an implied controversy around that, where maybe it's like, oh well, why are you guys bringing RS3 items over? So they kind of have to like rename them sometimes. Like I'm pretty sure the what are they called on Yama, the surge pots. They're just another item on RS3, just renamed and stuff. So I'm surprised they went with that, but they look cool. I love the thematic idea of dual wielding crossbows. That's badass. I'm
It is
generally pretty
badass. Yeah.
happy with them. They're definitely one of the cooler items, I think, from this raid. Because like, what else do we have? Other than those?
I think we've covered pretty much all of them. We have the Rondash, we have the Mega Rare, we have the Ascension crossbows, we have the Zeal upgrade. Um, I feel like we're missing something.
Zeal upgrade, Rondash, magic spec weapon, dual
Magic spec
crossbows.
weapon.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
five.
five. It's
That's
5 items.
5 items. Five
Yeah,
items.
I genuinely, this is probably the most like condensed raid, right? In regard to items.
Yeah. I mean, all the other ones have 7 or chambers, which is a whole different topic. Has
Yeah,
800
I'm
trillion on the drop table, which is
I'm
stupid. But
curious. How do you feel about like the chambers balance? Like, what do you want to see them do with that?
okay, so my feelings on the chambers drop table are mostly negative. I think in a way it's forgivable because again, it's the first raid that Jagex ever put out, and when it was first released, I don't even know if you know this. They had 14 items
Yeah.
on the purple table for chambers. They had like a dragon sword and a dragon harpoon, which are just hilariously insulting to get as raid drops. Um, I think a lot of people. I'm not even sure how to start this conversation, but the problem with the chambers drop table is multifaceted, and I think the biggest contributor to it being kind of a shitty raid to farm, especially for Iron Men, is the fact that there are so many things that you can get. And the rate for a purple is probably one of the lower rates compared to the other raids. It takes probably the most time there to get a purple. With modern like scaling and stuff like that, I think people have kind of turned that around slightly, but regardless, it feels the worst. I don't think anybody would really disagree with that. It feels the worst to chase a single purple or a specific purple from chambers because there's just so many that you can get there. I would really like to see. I don't think this is going to happen because Jagex pulled this a while ago and the reception was not particularly good. But I would love to see the drops removed, certain drops removed and transferred elsewhere. They tried to move the dragon claws onto the tormented demon drop table. That failed. I wish that would have passed, honestly. And it's extra compounded by the fact that I don't know, what is it? Over half of your drops that you get are going to be prayer scrolls. So it takes the longest to get a purple. When you do get a purple, half the time it's going to be something that you don't need. And then the other half of the time, guess what? You still have 10 other items to roll through to chase a single purple. It is a nightmare to greenlog. Like for an Iron Man, it's just such a painful raid. Almost every Iron Man I know nowadays will go there for the prayer scrolls themselves, and then they won't even touch the content until they get really really good gear to go back and try it again. I think I'm trying to think of the proposals that Jagex had. They're like slightly mending the problem with the drop table by focusing on the prayer scrolls themselves, which I think are maybe the biggest problem. So it's good to start there. I do not like the reroll mechanic. I don't like reroll mechanics in OSRS. It just feels so un-RuneScape to me. It would have somewhat the desired effect of, increasing the value of pretty much all of the drops at this point. Or I believe they had three initial and then they removed one of them. They kind of blended two of them together. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the other option they were doing is just slightly decreasing the drop rate of prayer scrolls and then slightly increasing the drop rate of purples as a whole. So you'll see more purples, roughly the same amount of prayer scrolls overall, but just slightly more of the other items, which again kind of feels like a band-aid fix to me. Like if I was left in control of this, I would probably tear up the drop table and people would probably be really mad at me. But I don't know. I think the problems with the Cox drop table are just so numerous. The prayer scrolls should be so much more expensive than they are. Like those are worth an immense amount of money for how much power they give you. And now they're basically free. They're like toilet paper,
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think, fuck, to quote one of my favorite characters in TV in all of television. Okay, no half measures, Walter. Breaking Bad. That's
I
what.
do. I love that show. That's
Yeah,
what it
like
is. It's half measures.
that's what it feels like. And so I cannot say I am happy with any of the proposed solutions the Jagex came up with, because all of them feel like pussyfooting around the actual thing, which is you have too many uniques, way too many uniques. Like you can cut them in half. And you balance them in a weird way where prayer skulls are really common. Like I think that even if it means you see less uniques, even if it means you see less, if you strip away half of them or one third of them, including the prayer scrolls maybe, or rebalance the player scrolls to be just like a normal unique, remove the idea of having 3 mega rares on the mega rare drop table. That's insane considering two of them.
Also insane.
Yeah, insane. The fact that only one of them is useful, the other one is completely fucking irrelevant. And obviously the third one is the Tebow. Like, there's so many issues. You can't just be pussyfooting around them. I think like there's so many problems. I think personally, if I see an issue maybe in the future if they try to like make the scrolls as crazy rare, or not as crazy, but just as rare as a regular unique that's worth something, that could have the problem of maybe people like offloading them, stacking them up, then selling them at a peak. I don't know, some economic issues. But on the other hand, hear me out. I think the idea of the Zeal prayer that's coming out with Raids 4 probably creates the precedent that we're going to see more prayer upgrades. And God knows melee is the one that needs it least, but the reason they didn't have a ranged or mage one, specifically a mage one, is because of how annoying they are in Chambers of Xeric. So I think realistically, they move the prayer scrolls from the drop table or make an entirely new system around them as a more expected upgrade to get in your account. It kind of sucks because of how powerful they are. It would feel weird, but they are just so worthless right now. I think there's going to be an implicit terrible feeling that in like 5 years, they're both worth like 250 mil, like it would be a weird thing there where like they've been so worthless for such a long time. It feels a bit artificial there. So if I had to pick, and I think I said this, maybe to Goblin or something, where I'm like, what if you guys just removed them? And like, what if you just stopped with the prayer scroll? What if you just stopped trying to balance them and just took them off the table entirely? Take the Din's Bulwark off the table. God damn it! Like you put it on Wintertod at this point, bro. At least the Wintertod doors.
Same joke, actually.
Yeah, like
it's on the doors it did, man.
Right, like literally, it's just such a meme item, and that was the first one I got twice, and I think that alone would help the table a lot, because other than those 3 items, the table's actually solid. Like you're always getting something kind of good, right? The Ancestral is great. The Dragon Hunter crossbow is solid. The Bulwark, or the the Bulwark is amazing, right? The offhand shield, the buckler, not the Bulwark. The buckler is amazing.
Yeah, buckler.
So like you have all these great items. They're spoiled by a couple, and I almost feel like because the prayer scrolls are already worthless, what if like every time you do a Cox clear, you have like a completely separate drop table, a 1 in 3 chance to roll between like 1 in 5, scraps that you eventually build together to create the prayer you want. Like it's not fun economically. It's not the ideal solution, but but god damn it, like if we're gonna have to spend another like 3 summer sweep ups debating on if we should nerf the rates or buff the rates because we want the prayer scrolls to be worth something because they're so powerful, like nothing's gonna get done at this point. It's like a Fasani situation. Can we just like rip the band-aid off? It's a problem. There are so many different ways we can fix it. None of them are going to be perfect, but it needs to be more than just like, well, do we do maybe like adjust the drop rate by 2.3% in 2 years? Like maybe we do like, no, just get it done, please. That's my take. I don't know if that's too edgy, but
It's definitely a little edgy, but I don't think it's inherently wrong. Like, because you're right, dude. Jagex has ripped the Band-Aid off before, like with the blowpipe is kind of the big item that they basically just demolished because it was before you played, I'm pretty sure, but the
oh yeah.
blowpipe used to be so strong, so insanely strong, and it was that way for 6 years. And then they're eventually like, hey guys, this is actually really harmful to our future reward space. We're gonna make this dog shit. And it's not dog shit, it's still pretty good, but like compared to what it was, dude, it used to be just absolutely nuclear. And then I look at them in their proposals for like the prayer scroll drop rates, and they are functionally like okay, hard mode Tob reduced the Avernic drop rate by not even that much. It was like 5% total in the table. And they brought it down to I think 38% of Purple Stein in hard mode are an Avernic. And you look at what they're doing for challenge mode chambers, which is like where all of this balancing is taking place more or less. And they're bringing the drop rate of prayer scrolls from 58% down to like 55. Like it's like nothing. Like I think if you really want to, if they're insistent on not removing anything from the drop table and not making any changes besides just balancing the percentages, challenge mode chambers would feel so much better if those prayer scrolls were sitting in the 30s, like a 38 like the Avernic. I think that's like 20% less total. That's the kind of drastic change they need to make for it to be meaningful in any way. And I just feel like they're afraid to do it for some reason or another, and I can't really figure out why.
Yeah, I think the two most problematic drop tables in the game are Cox and Fasani, right? And Nightmare. And
Yeah.
it's I'm not gonna like sit here and say, oh, I'm so frustrating. At the end of the day, the game's in a great spot. We're enjoying it. It's not a big deal. But like it's somewhat frustrating to have like half the summer sweep up be talking about the potential for future changes. It's like, no, sweep it up. Come on. Like let's get things
Yeah.
moving. Let's get the
Actually do
conversation
it,
rolling. Like I did not enjoy the turnaround with speaking about Fasani. Um shit, hold on. Did they even talk about Fasani in the summer sweep up?
Uh, I don't think they talked about the rates. They just talked about buffing Inquisitor.
Moving, yeah, they buffing Inquisitor, but with the orbs.
Oh yeah, and the orbs. Yeah. You're
Yeah,
right. They did talk about that.
I feel like the orbs should just, I don't know what to do with them. Like I had the idea of combining them all into one orb, and then you can pick which one you get, which would flatten the prices, but definitely benefit from not having an awful table. But like whatever they choose, it feels like, people are going to be going into Fasani now that we all know, right? Realistically, we all know that raids 4 is going to be a crush week raid, right? And like we all know people are going to be jumping into Fasani if they're an Iron Man, or maybe even as a main, you might want to, cash in on the increase in prices, and people are going to have a miserable time and burn themselves out because it's a 1 in 1600 for a orb. But even just that fact of getting one of those like semi-useless items, specifically like a volley or something, it's worth nothing. It's annoying. The staff is annoying. Is miserable, right? Like a really miserable grind. I feel like it's one of those
Yeah.
things that you have the perfect opportunity to course correct here, right?
And I hope we see that, but I don't. I don't know. I really. It's so hard to predict what Jagex is going to do, because I like one of my favorite things about Jagex is that they do listen to the player base and their wants and their needs, but also sometimes I feel like they bend a little bit too much when they should be putting their foot down on stuff like this and ripping the band-aid off. And it's kind of a crapshoot for what route they're going to take.
Yeah, it feels like almost sometimes it's a bit too soft of a change, and then nothing ends up changing, right? Like that's always been the concern there. It's like, okay, we're just kind of, yeah, half measuring it up. I want to I want to quickly pivot, and now that we're like in the final fraction of our conversation, I want to quickly pivot to just content creation, streaming, the game,
Yeah,
like
hell yeah.
your experience with it, because recently I think it's fair to say we had probably the biggest event in the history of the game, right? DMM All Stars, the third one. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. How do you feel about that? Obviously, it's probably gonna be positive, but I'm curious.
Oh no, great. I mean, you're right. It was the biggest event, not only in terms of viewership, but combined viewership for the finals. Let's be real, carried by Oda Block for sure. We had 250,000 concurrent viewers across all platforms for the finals, and then not only that, but the biggest in-person RuneScape event ever, with essentially a sold-out 4,000 person arena. Um, it was incredible, and I feel like all of the really, really big content creators are starting to kind of pivot towards, instead of just making RuneScape videos, making RuneScape events. I think way back in the day, like the progenitor of all of this was probably EVscape, because he was
Mhm.
doing, the speedrun cups and the battle royales and stuff. And then Soup started doing the Gellinor games, and then Solo Mission got in on it with DMM, and it ultimately culminated in a massive, massive undertaking by Jagex to throw an actual IRL tournament for the finale of Deadman All Stars, which is, I mean, it is so incredible to see. Like, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside that this is just Solo Mission in his fucking bedroom, clicking away on his computer 5 years ago. And then it turned into this. He got one of the largest gaming companies in the world to essentially lose a massive amount of money hosting this event for the benefit of the community and for marketing. I guess kind of like a loss leader, more or less. But the event was incredible. I was very, very fortunate to be able to do the highlight videos for it, which was an absolute blast. And then obviously got to go to the in-person tournament and meet so many creators that I have genuinely looked up to. Like, I felt like a fan when I was in there. It was really cool just hanging out in the green room and talking everyone and seeing everything behind the scenes. It's really great to see RuneScape embrace that, to see Jagex embrace that, because if I'm gonna be honest here, I know esports is kind of like the quote unquote future of gaming. I think RuneScape is a dog shit esport. It'll never be a big or good esport, but I think the community really appreciates this, because that's the one thing that RuneScape does so much better than not only any other game, but especially any other MMO, is just the feeling of community that we have. And the fact that Jagex is willing to invest in that makes me very happy.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I am so jealous. I'm so sad I wasn't able to go to the live event. Obviously looking onto it, I was so like, oh man, I wish I could see all this happening live, because it was such an incredible, smooth showing. Honestly, like very few hiccups at all. I guess you could say
Yeah, it
that
went
maybe,
perfect. Yeah, it was
yeah,
crazy.
maybe the delays between matches were a bit long, but beyond that, I mean, like it was pretty much as perfect as it can get when it comes to just like presentation, showing what's happening. Like it was so well done. The It helps that literally like you could not get closer matches in the finale if you tried. Like those were some unbelievable matches, and I obviously agree with you that RuneScape, not necessarily an esport, but it's so funny that this like quasi sport eventing, quasi esport event got more views than the vast majority of esport events. It shows that like there's so much community traction, right, in it, right? There's so much like community love and passion and support for it. It's almost like a, what do they call it in esports? Like an invitational, where it's mostly just content creators and for fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is an invitational. That's exactly what it is.
Okay, that's what they call it. Yeah, exactly. Like that's
Yeah.
it was so cool. I am, and obviously the week leading up to it, arguably even more amazing. The amount of just like jaw-droppingly crazy moments that we got. I mean, I was glued to my screen. I work from home, thankfully, but like I was just watching it 24/7. Like I felt like I woke up every day and I was just nonstop watching All Stars. I didn't work on a video. Thank God I released one earlier, because I would be delayed. Like it was so fun. And looking ahead, right? I messaged Solo Mission about this a few weeks ago, I think, where I'm like, man, like you have no idea how insane this event is, like just as an onlooker, because the first DMM All Stars happened like only like a month or two after I started playing the game, and it was such a influential thing for me, where I'm like, it almost inspired me to continue playing. Like in many ways, it's so responsible to have more the same responsibility as watching Gillinor games for the first time, or Swampletics or whatever. Like it's such a foundational, like trend setting event. And this one was so exceptional, like such a huge step up, I think, above the first two. Um, that I'm like, where do you see it going from here? Like, what do you want to see in DMM All Stars 4? Like, how do you improve on a format that's proven to be so good? Like, I'm asking you this now, by the way. How do you feel
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that?
I mean, for the time being, I almost don't think it needs to be improved on. I think this needs to be done again. Like, I think we need to kind of put this through the test again a couple times to just really solidify it as something that Jagex is willing to do. Because I talked to so many of the JMods. I ended up talking to Mod North, the CEO of Jagex, about this
Mhm.
event. And obviously, they all absolutely loved it, and they thought it was such an incredible event. When it came to hosting another U.S. event, all the answers I got were, kind of like half answers, because obviously this was a logistical nightmare for Jagex, a British company, to host events in the U.S. But I mean, the success of it cannot be understated. I would really like to see more in-person events, just one Brunfest, one other Jagex event throughout the year. If that's doable, that's probably a lot for Jagex. I don't think we'll see that for a long time. But now that the door has been opened, I mean, I would love to see this continued upon. And as it grows, if it does grow to a more meaningful amount, then I would really start thinking on how to better it, how to perfect it, how to expand upon it. But for the time being, I think we should all be happy with where it is right now and just trying to continue the momentum that we have with it.
No, that's a very fair take. I think that the format, I think maybe we'll definitely will see some changes, like in regard to next year, like, oh, how's the
Oh
blood
yeah,
money
yeah,
system, whatever. But when it comes to the
yeah,
event
yeah.
itself, I think just like running it back again and seeing what they can do. I think the real like thing there is that every esports event, I think, it runs at a major loss, right? Even Riot's enormous events run at a loss. They are so unbelievably expensive, and they really don't get any money out of it. Really, the tickets are not making up for even a fraction of the cost of like
Yeah,
the
those
giant
tickets
German
were fucking
arena.
expensive, dude.
Yeah.
Those were so expensive tickets for a
Oh,
RuneScape event.
dude, 100%. Like, so securing good sponsors. I was surprised to see Chipotle, which is kind of sick, but like, yeah, securing good sponsors, getting more sponsors, like these are the ways to kind of like mitigate the loss there, because it is crazy what it does for community morale. I feel like the difference between the way the community was speaking about the game pre Deadman All Stars season 3 and after is night and day. I mean, like, even just as someone who doesn't participate, but just looks at the news post updates on like on the RuneScape Discord, the old school RuneScape Discord, where they have the new news tab section with the amount of like cont- essentially the thumbs up and thumbs down portion of that is all just the community's current emotions about the game. And by and large, for the last like 4 months, it was just a bunch of thumbs down. People were kind of negative about the game. It was a bit of a content drought,
Mm,
arguably. People weren't particularly
yeah,
happy
no,
with a lot
I
of
feel
things.
that 100%.
And it feels like a release didn't fix that. An event did. The ability to
Yeah.
just go on Reddit and actually see fun stuff for the first time in months, what felt like months, it was crazy. Like the No Monkey Inferno clutch, right? The perp stealing the fucking staff twice, or it was the staff and then
The
the VLS,
VLS,
right?
yeah.
Like two great escapes. Like it was. These are the kinds of things that I think create lore and history in the community, and I think investing in that is how you build out a community for even longer than what currently exists in RuneScape. And I'm honestly, as a relatively new player at this point, I'm excited to go to RuneFest this year and see it in person as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. You going to RuneFest? That's
Oh
that's
yeah,
gonna be a blast. I'm
yeah,
very
yeah.
excited because I missed last RuneFest because they rescheduled it during something else I had to do. So this was my first ever Jagex event, and like selfishly, I'm gonna have a bit of an ego about this here. I've never felt more like a celebrity in my life. Like I couldn't go anywhere without being mobbed, and I think it was really, like, again, selfishly, it was really nice for me to see, because as content creators, we exist essentially solely online. Like, I'll get recognized in person occasionally, but for the most part, like, I'm just sitting at home, or I'm at the gym, or I'm at Target, and life is as normal. You can read a nice comment and it's nice to see, but when you're in person, and you see how much of an effect you actually have on people. It's really really motivating, and it's like a huge. It was genuinely like a huge gratitude moment for me. I think, like just to sit there and understand how lucky I am to be in the position that I am, along with all the other creators who are receiving, the same amount of attention. It was really nice to see. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean, what you're saying is I need to put my face out there so people recognize me so I can get an ego about things. But I get it. I definitely, I
You could
definitely
do that,
understand. Yeah.
or if you're more of a shy, quiet person, you could keep it low key. Dude, there are a lot of like really famous RuneScapers there who don't show their face, and just no one knew who they were. So they were
Yeah.
walking
Yeah.
around unimpeded. Like I was walking around with an NFL star. Like I was hanging out with Chig for a lot of it, and like a few people recognized him, but it was like people thought he was just my bodyguard. Like
Yeah.
it was insane because anywhere else in the world, that would be the reverse 100-fold.
Oh, and definitely. It would probably be funny for him. You know what I mean? Like to experience such a thing where he's like, oh wow, it's kind of. I feel like I'm being undercover right now because I'm in a different space. I can imagine like a lot of the YouTubers, so even the bigger ones, right? Like my buddy Josh. Josh is in gaming. Like he doesn't put his face out all the time out there, right? So like
I
like
don't know what he looks like.
yeah, yeah, like or even Settled. I think my first time ever seeing Settled was him accepting the golden gnome, right?
Yeah.
In RuneFest 2 years ago. So like it's a very interesting dynamic there. I mean, it was crazy, right? Like I was watching the Oda Block stream, I was watching the main stream, and seeing it like he just walks in a room and like it just lights up. Like it's like fucking
Yeah.
Justin
Block's
Timberlake
like a
walked in,
real celebrity, bro. That was
Yeah,
insane to see.
yeah, it's crazy. So no, it's 100%. You can't not be overstated just how important I think these things are for community morale. It really is. Like I think there's one thing about delivering good content updates. It's another thing is delivering good vibes in a weird way, right? Where I
Yeah.
genuinely feel like Blood Moon Rises, for it being arguably one of the bigger content updates ever, arguably being the best quest ever with some of the best, one of the best bosses ever. I don't think it would have been as well received if it wasn't for Deadman Allstars, as crazy as that sounds, because it just put
No, no,
everybody
that's
in such
totally
a good
true.
place, you know? Um,
Yeah.
I'm so and if they do another one, there's nothing that's gonna fucking stop me from going to the next one. I've already talked to some of my buddies about it. I'm like, we're gonna do a fantasy league for the next All Stars. We're gonna put down a couple bands on it, and we're gonna go there and watch it live. That's what we're gonna fucking do.
Dude, that'd be so much fun. That'd be
Yep.
crazy.
Well, listen, okay. I'm glad we ended on such a positive note. I want to thank you so much for coming. But before we fully wrap up, okay, there's something I ask of just about every guest that goes on my podcast, and I want to ask this to you too. If there
All
was,
right.
if you were a RuneScape god for a day, not like a in-game god, like a someone who could snap their fingers and change anything about RuneScape ever. It could be the biggest change or the smallest change. It could be fucking, I don't know, adding EOC or not, What would that change be and why?
Oh man, that's such a difficult question. I was talking to Mod Goblin about this same exact topic,
What a legend,
and
by
I
the way.
wish I know Goblin. I want to shout out Goblin really quick. Small sidebar. That dude is one of the most like violently intelligent people I've ever met. He's damn. That guy's got a brain on him, dude. I like him a lot.
Yep.
Oh, okay. First of all, I would fucking tear up the Chambers drop table, please. That's like the easiest one in my mind. Second, remove all clue steps from the wilderness. Remove every single clue step from the wilderness. Don't have clues interact with the wilderness at all. And then third, delete VBP.
It's gone.
that one's a joke. I wouldn't delete that, but PvP
You remove
is really
the clue steps
problematic.
and you delete PvP. So even the clue step, like you're just doing it just for the love of the game at that point. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard. This is kind of a very brief topic, but I don't know if you heard the podcast episode I did with Kevin Framed, and him and I talked a lot about the wilderness, as you can imagine. And one of the conversations there was about wilderness clues and how like we kind of settled on an idea where we could create an entirely new branch of or tier of clue that is purely in the wilderness. and the reward table scales with how much risk you're bringing. So if you bring like 50 million worth of risk, you get like 4 or 5 rolls on the drop table, as opposed to like, 50K where you can only get one roll on the drop table. I think that was kind of a neat idea for wilderness clue steps, because yeah, I definitely agree with you. I don't like hard steps in the wilderness. They're just inconvenient. Like, it's not like I'm upset that someone PKs me for a clue scroll or a spade or whatever. It's that it's just fucking annoying dropping all the stuff and
Yeah.
bank, and yeah, it's just cringe.
Yeah, it's just very incongruent. I think they should be removed, but yeah, those are my immediate thoughts.
Very, very valid. Good takes there, I would say. And I think good takes throughout. Perfect takes, if I were to say, throughout the podcast from both of us, with nothing particularly controversial at all. Tasty Life, thank you so much for coming. It's been a blast having you on, and having a conversation, going yap for yap with one of the bigger yappers, I think, in the space, me included, obviously. And it's been great. It's been great. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, brother. Remember, guys, if you're watching this, like this video, comment on the video your thoughts. You could tell us you hate us. You could tell us you love us. It's all interaction. Gets Mr. Theory-Wise some more money. And, of course, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the podcast. I will see you guys whenever the hell you watch one of my next videos.
I'll leave it off on that. Thank you.